verse 18. Then the Lord appeared to him. Well, wait a minute. Before I start, we just want to say that in chapter 17 that we finished, Abraham was given the sign of the covenant, and he was told that his name was changed to Abraham, and he and Sarah would have a child and name it Isaac. And God told him that the sign of the covenant was that every male in his household was to be circumcised. Anybody older than 8 days old was to be circumcised, and that this was to continue on and show the covenant between Abraham and God and his people. So here we are. We're in verse 18. And the Lord appeared to him by the terebinth trees of Mamre, and he was sitting in the tent door in the heat of the day. So he lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing by him. And when he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them and bowed himself to the ground and said, My Lord, if I have now found favor in your sight, do not pass by your servant. Please little water be brought, and wash your feet and rest yourselves under the tree. And I will bring a morsel of bread that you may refresh your hearts. After that you may pass by, inasmuch as you have come to your servant. They said, Do as you have said. So Abraham hurried to the tent to Sarah and said, Quickly make 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes. And Abraham ran to the herd, took a tender and good calf, and gave it to a young woman. He hastened to prepare it. So he took butter and milk and a calf which he had prepared, and set it before them, and they stood by them by the tree as they ate. Then they said to him, Where is Sarah your wife? And so he said, Here in the tent. And he said, I will certainly return to you according to the time of life, and behold, Sarah your wife shall have a son. Sarah was listening at the tent door which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, well advanced in age, and Sarah had passed the age of childbearing. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I've grown old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also? So when she says having pleasure, children were considered a blessing, and the more children you had, the more blessed you were. And she had not had any, and this was very significant for women. Their value, I know the Lord loves us all, right? But the value as a wife, even though Sarah was loved by Abraham, the thing that they contributed was having children, because children carried on the name, they carried on everything that the family did just to survive. Children were very important at this time in history. But so she said, How shall I have pleasure? Because that would be pleasing for her to bear children. And the Lord said to Abraham, Why did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I surely bear a child since I am old? So the Lord heard her thoughts. Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time I will return to you according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. But Sarah denied it, saying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. And he said, No, you did laugh, because you can't lie to the Lord. He knows what we do outwardly. He can see that, but he can also see in our hearts. And she thought she was going to lie, and God said, No, I know you laughed. So that's the end of verse. Oh, no, that's not the end. What am I saying? Abraham intercedes for Sodom. That's the next. So we're in verse 16, okay? So they're supposed to be having a child, but nobody believes. Well, Sarah doesn't believe it. She got called out for it. Okay. Then the men rose from there and looked towards Sodom, and Abraham went with them to send them on the way. And the Lord said, Shall I hide from Abraham what I'm doing, since Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth be blessed for him? For I have known him in order that he may command his children and his household after them, that they may keep the way of the Lord to do righteous and justice, that the Lord may bring Abraham what he has spoken to him. And the Lord said, Because the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is grave, I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry against it that has come to me, and if not, I will know. And then the men turned away from there and went to Sodom, but Abraham still stood before the Lord. So these men who had they were passing by, and Abraham let them rest in the shade. He washed their feet, he fed them, and they told him, this was like a confirmation, right? He told him that he was indeed going to have a child. And then they kind of made it known what they were doing. They were on their way to Sodom and Gomorrah. And so they started on their way, and Abraham's still with the Lord. And so Abraham came near and said, would you also destroy the righteous with the wicked? Because remember, Lot's living in Sodom, his nephew. Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Would you also destroy the place and not spare it for the 50 righteous that were left in it? So he's talking to God about this. Would you destroy it if there were righteous people there? Far be it from you to do such a thing as this, to slay the righteous with the wicked, so that the righteous should be as the wicked. Far be it from you. Shall you not judge all of the earth to do right? In other words, he's saying, you're a righteous judge, Lord. You judge people according to their own righteousness or unrighteousness. And you wouldn't punish a righteous person just because there were so many unrighteous people around it. And the Lord said, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare all the place for their sake. So God's saying, you're right, I'm righteous. And then Abraham answered and said, but indeed now, who am but dust and ashes, have taken upon it myself to speak to the Lord. Suppose there were 5 less than 50. Suppose that there were 5 less than the 50 righteous. Would you destroy all the city for lack of 5? So he said, if I find 45, I wouldn't destroy it. And he spoke to him yet again and said, suppose there should be 40 found there. So the Lord said, or so he said, I will not do it for the sake of 40. Then he said, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak. Suppose 30 are found there. So he said, I will not do it if I find 30 there. So he realizes that he's talking to the Lord, and he's kind of pressing him a little bit, saying, well, what if there's only this? You know, it's almost like a child. Have you ever had a child, they're trying to figure something out, and they may start asking these questions, and it seems kind of like they're playing a game with you to get their way, which maybe Abraham is, but he knows that Lot's there. You know, and he's doing it in a way that he's kind of testing God. And so far the Lord is saying, yeah, I'm going to have mercy, okay? And then he said, indeed now I have taken upon myself to speak to the Lord. Suppose 20 were there. So he said, I will not destroy it for the sake of 20. And then he said, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak once more. Suppose the 10 should be found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for the sake of 10. So he knows that he could be pushing God's patience, right? So the Lord went his way as soon as he had finished speaking with Abram, and Abram returned to his place. So they kind of left it at that, and that's the end of verse 18. So what do you think is going to happen in verse 19? We'll find out.